Now, when you first got this project, what were your thoughts? Because it, like you said, it already had an embedded fan base. Do you feel a sense of responsibility to those fans already where you know people are going to be hypercritical?
Yeah, I think you need to forget about those things because it's unnecessary pressure. I think you have to go back to create a relationship with your director and your scripts and take it one step at a time. You know, it's like any project. If you let the pressure take over, then I think you know having your head in the right space to be efficient and to. Every stories are different. There was a certain type of visual attached to the video games, but the video games are relatively old now, so everything has moved forward. So the recipe and the ingredients that we had were different, and we did as best as we could with what we had, you know, and kind of made our own story out of it.
I want to talk about the visual inspiration for The Witcher, and we have a question here from Yashuri Taguchi on Facebook. Wants to know, what was your inspiration for the visual style of the show? Were you taking cues from Game of Thrones, other films? What was inspiring you?
I mean, we've looked, it's difficult not to talk about Game of Thrones because we are in the same sort of fantasy world. I mean, there is possibly more magic to The Witcher. It's a different fantasy or type of fantasy. But visually, you know, we got inspired by films like Macbeth from Justin Kurzel, Snow White from Rupert Sanders. We've looked back at films like Fantastic Beasts, at the world of Guillermo del Toro, which is very rich, the darkness and the energy of films like Children of Men. I think you take a little bit of inspiration from lots of different boxes and you see how you're going to mix them all together. And each episode has a different sort of pace and storyline, you know. So you kind of readapt it and find it all the way through.
Did you feel as though you had to stick to a certain aesthetic? Because there already was an established book series. There was the video game. Were there any things that you had to take from those, you know, assets while you're developing the look for the show?
There is a certain style of images that are in those shows, you know. Your big, beautiful shaft of light, your smoky environment, your darkly lit cave, and your flame set, your candlelit set. There is automatically something that you're gonna play with. And after you decide what's gonna be your element of contrast, are you gonna use color? Color contrast was an interesting way to play in some of the set. The danger, I think, sometimes with those shows, they can become a little bit monochromatic in some of the interior, and I think that's something we've tried to balance it out because you end up with your blacks, your browns, your pretty dark set all the time. So it's how do you get some element of colors into it? How do you create a palette that kind of belong to the word or belong to each story as a bit of a different palette? Some episode we travel to completely different location within a minute in the episode, and you go from super high punchy colors from the desert to like super desaturated dark streets. It's creating a journey, I think, more than taking a formula completely established. I mean, you completely readapt the look to the story and to the location that you're going to have to use.
Have you ever created medieval worlds in your work before?
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of touched it a little bit on other TV series. Like did it a little bit in The White Queen. I did it a little bit in Beowulf. I definitely touched the fantasy through doing second unit with Fantastic Beasts, which was giving me like an interesting, you know, knowledge about what we can do with visual effects and how we can push them and how we create creatures and how you integrate the visual effects world to the stunt world and how far we can push the sequences. And all my work in second unit's been incredibly useful on The Witcher.
Why is that?
So that, well, it's, second unit is, your work is very driven by visual effects and by stunts. And there's a big part of that in The Witcher. So it was giving us the possibility to see how visually we could push the sequences and push the magic a little bit, push the sequence into something that's a bit different,